Welcome to Making Sense of the Chaos, Reflections from Food Policy Councils on 2020. We are thrilled that you have joined us this afternoon to reflect on and share about your experiences with the events of 2020. Last year just kept the hits coming with a global pandemic, an economic crisis, failures of our food system, demonstrations against racial injustice, extreme wildfires, hurricanes, and contentious elections that continue to be falsely contested today. But throughout all of these events, we witnessed the strength, resiliency, innovation, and dedication of you and other members of your food policy councils to endure these events of last year. We welcome you here today because of your role with food policy councils or similar groups that work on local food systems policy through a collaborative model, and we look forward to sharing this time with you. In November of 2020, the Food Policy Networks Project planned to host its first ever in-person gathering for food policy councils across the US and welcoming individuals from Canada and across the world too. But like many other events, it was canceled due to the pandemic and it has been postponed until September of 2021. To recognize the loss of this opportunity to gather and to entice you to attend an in-person event later this year, we wanted to invite you to reflect on the past with us and to begin to look forward towards the future. This webinar is being hosted by the Center for a Livable Future, an interdisciplinary center located at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. The Food Policy Networks project is one of our projects with the goal to build the capacity of food system stakeholders to reform local, state, regional, and tribal food systems through effective public policy. We do this through training, sharing best practices, networking with other food policy councils and leaders, and developing and providing food policy resource materials. My name is Karen Bassarab, and I work with the Food Policy Networks Project. Also on the call with me is Ann Palmer, who's the project director for the Food Policy Networks Project, and Rachel Santo, who is a senior program coordinator with the project. We, for the most part, will be your technical support team for this event. Should you have any issues with sound or volume or any questions, please feel free to reach out to us via the chat box. You should have a link or a button for the chat box at the bottom of your screen. Everyone that's joining today will be in mute as they join. We ask you to turn your videos off for the moment. This event will go back and forth between having you listen and also having you share in breakout rooms, so you will have opportunities to turn on your video and your audio at some point. In addition, we will be recording the event today and we'll share the recording along with a playlist. Thank you for contributing to the playlist to everyone that has registered. And with that, I'm going to close out and pass it off to Ann to kick us off with a moment of silent reflection.
Hello, everybody. What we'd like you to do next is to just spend a minute or two writing in the chat box, what is it that drives you to do your food policy work? It could be within a council model, it could be within your organization, however you want to envision that. Just spend a couple minutes writing that in, and you can continue to also be introducing yourselves. So while we're waiting for everybody to put what drives them to do this work in the chat box, I'm going to go ahead and introduce two of the people that are going to be working with us today. So it is an honor to introduce Renee Andreyani and Karen Spiller. Renee is going to be our graphic recorder for the day. So you'll see her box as she is visualizing everything that she's hearing. She'll be even joining some of the breakout rooms today. And then the other person I'm going to introduce is Karen Spiller. Karen is our facilitator. Karen provides mission-based consulting with a focus on advocacy, resource matching, board development, and strategic planning for health and equity-focused initiatives. With a focus on racial equity and intersectionality, Karen works with state, local, regional, and national organizations committed to creating equitable public health and sustainable food systems. She's a steering committee member of and a Massachusetts ambassador for the New Food Solutions New England, a 6-network state focused on food systems transformation with racial equity at its core. She's also a professor of sustainable food systems at the University of New Hampshire in Durham. Karen is engaged in scholarship on the intersection of networks and racial equity across the campus and in the surrounding community. She's celebrating its 6th year of national and international participation. In April 2020, Karen co-leads the Food Solutions New England 21-day Racial Equity Habit Forming Challenge. I encourage you all to join that. It is really fun. And we've had the honor of working with Karen before, and so I'm happily turning it over to her. Thanks, Karen.
Oh, thank you. And it's such an honor to be here. Such an honor to be here. So thank you. And I am sitting in New Hampshire, and I have to give honor and gratitude to the indigenous peoples of Pennacock and Wabanaki and Abenaki, all of who still inhabit this land, and gratitude for all that they have given and continue to give to nourish and support and fuel us. So we're thinking about resilience and restoration and regeneration. Karen, we think about how we make sense of the chaos. And not that I have to say this, because Karen has lifted this up, but we have experienced a confluence of pandemics, the COVID-19, the realized everyday pandemic of racism that was illuminated by the violence against Black lives that included the deaths of George Floyd. I always speak of him as Mr. Floyd, and Breonna Taylor and Aubrey, and many, many others, and the undeniable impact of climate change and increased economic uncertainty. So I've been asking myself this constantly, how are we still standing? And I believe that we have been listening to our hearts and the hearts of others, and for their companionship and allyship, encouragement, innovative strategies for healing and for action. So I want to share a quote of George Washington Carver, and it's the secret of the peanut. Anything will give up its secrets if you love it enough. Not only have I found that when I talk to little flowers or little peanut, they will give up their secrets, but I've found when I silently commune with people, they give up their secrets also, if you love them enough. So these times have reminded us to work and act differently, see and touch differently, and yes, hear differently, listen differently, all with more intentionality and warmth, and yes, with love and grace. And we're finding strength in this as we hold on to that which nurtures, nourishes, and fuels us. So this time together, we're going to spend listening and sharing how we as resilient solutionary people who make sense, and I suggest make magic, out of chaos, moving steadfastly from restoration to regeneration in community to something more equitable and just. And we're thinking about our food system that serves and feeds us all. So as this community of the food policy councils, today we have among us those who have generously shared and want to share the reflections of 2020 and their pathways to 2021. So I want to give a brief introduction, and then they will, through our questions and dialogue, say more about their policy council, their work, and their commitments. So starting with the upper Midwest, we have from Minnesota, Tamara Downs Schwei, from the local food policy coordinator, Homegrown Minneapolis. It was founded in 2012, embedded in city government, and works together with stakeholders to provide guidance and innovative solutions to local food issues to the city. And most recently has been working on food policy action plan. And so we have with us from Wisconsin, Jesse Padron, and he's a chairman of Oneida Community Integrated Food Systems in Wisconsin. The Tribal Council, formed in 1994, is embedded in government as well, working to bring people closer to their food through education on food-related risk in a traditional foods, building on economy, the local economy that offers job opportunities. And they also most recently completed a plan to provide locally sourced food to low-income community members. And now going down to the south, we have from Louisiana, Elisa Muñoz-Miller, Executive Director of the New Orleans Food Policy Council Committee. And that's a nonprofit council formed in 2007, serving as an advisor to the local government. So government is connected in this way. It's wonderful to see that you're having an opportunity for impact in that way, and works to shape the public policy to improve equity and opportunity and collaboration in that local food system. And most recently, it's focused on protecting and expanding the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, SNAP. So that's a snapshot of our panelists that are with us today, our guest speakers, our colleagues and accomplices that'll be starting us off in some of the dialogue. So we have questions that I'm going to pose to them. They will answer them, and then as we move through our time together, there's going to be a breakout session. Just want to give you a flow breakout session, so you will be able to have some time together to respond to that as well, those questions as well. And we'll have 2 rounds of that, and then close with the, not final words, but I say that the linking words we'll hear from Tamara, Jesse, and Elisa as we close out our time together. So that's kind of the flow we're going to have here. So I'm going to start with the questions, and we were calling this how we were resilient in 2020, how we were resilient. And so we've experienced a lot of confluence of the natural and racial and health crisis. And in that, I want to ask you, what was your response as a Food Policy Council to those events? And how did you prioritize your response? And I'm going to, call on you one at a time to share that. And then we'll just keep moving through to the second question. So Tamara, please, what was your response to all that we were experiencing in this last year? And how did you prioritize that?
It's an honor to be here. Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. Big question, and big year for us in Minneapolis. So it is an honor to be here representing the Homegrown Minneapolis Food Council and the initiative. And the beginning of 2020 certainly felt different than 2021. And the Food Council was engaged, as you mentioned, in the development of a food action plan to help us co-create a more just and resilient, equitable food system in Minneapolis. We have wonderful food resources, but knew we had work to do. And somewhat ironically or coincidentally, we had been nearing the beginning of our final phase of that process when the pandemic started to make itself clear. And so about 10 months ago, we were just on the cusp of moving to our stage of some deep community engagement on the food action plan when unfortunately the pandemic forced us to cease operating temporarily as a food council. And I should say the Food Council is a, as you mentioned, embedded in city government. It's designed as a city community partnership, which is what, when you ask what draws you to the work, to me, drew me to the opportunity to work for a city that wanted to have a partnership with the community, which is a constant practice and evolution as an individual, professional, and a group to learn and practice. What does that mean for us to actually partner authentically, right? And with communities who face so many structural barriers and so much structural racism currently and historically that have given us a lot of work to do together. And been a real honor to partner in that collaboration with Sega Tamana and Kate Siebold, our community member co-chairs, and to have a structure that also has city members and community. So going into that year, that was a structure that we had, which poses opportunities and challenges where a city government with a suddenly reduced capacity and some real concern about ensuring that we have transparency and accessibility in a pandemic caused us to have some new, platforms like everyone, but processes and such that we were deep and really with lots of momentum in a process that had a big pause button hit, and then some time to start reflecting when very tragically and horribly the death of George Floyd occurred, and our city experienced unrest that then took grocery offline and briefly in some really key areas of the city. So when we talk about prioritizing our response in this city with the Food Council, I will focus on our listening as a Food Council to each other and to our Black, Indigenous, people of color, residents and neighbors and partners, and together connecting and stepping back as a official city entity and stepping in with our ears and our hearts to see what we can do differently and better, and how we can lift up the amazing, incredible resilience of our BIPOC neighbors and businesses who were feeding each other really in the midst of grocery and food going offline, hunger relief in motion. We have some incredibly resilient community examples for this food action plan that going into the next year, when we looked at prioritizing food action plan remained on the list, but with that pause that has enabled us to really have some real changes to what we will lift up and some much richer examples and stronger language to use as we build that plan together with our community and our city as collaborators. I think it may be at my time. I can say so much on this topic, so I can stop there or give a chance for the next collaborator here.
Tamara, thank you so much. And yes, you could continue to talk because there's so much to share. There's so much to share. Jesse, would you share how your policy council responded and how did it prioritize? Jesse, you're on mute.
How's that?
Wonderful.
Our first response with the Oneida Nation school system was to determine what the needs of our community are. And we mobilized with volunteers to help distribute meals that were created within the kitchen of our high school. It's a full service kitchen. And so we're able to feed our students and community families through a non-congregate food distribution system. We prepared 2 meals per day for each recipient, which included breakfast and lunch. That opened our eyes to the actual number of people within the community who did not have access to food on a regular basis. So we increased our numbers, and we were preparing up to 800 meals per day to feed the community within the Oneida Reservation. We also were cooperating with several other school districts within our area, some of which our Oneida students attend. We had the Seymour School District to our west. We had the Green Bay Public Schools to our east. To our south were the Freedom and a few others. We were able to transition over into a augmentation role. There was food distribution going on at other areas within the reservation that were being provided by the USDA. And that included the ingredients for several meals for up to a week. And the school meals, we eventually, at the end of the last school year in May of 2020, we scaled back our production to help distribute to more families in the sense that we coordinated with the food distribution system here on the reservation, and we're able to adjust our production to meet those needs. It's been a long year. We just received word yesterday that we will be doing or starting a hybrid school presentation by the end of this month, January 25th. We will be producing meals both for the student population that is in attendance, and then also a drive-up distribution system for people who are not in attendance on that day. So we already have plans in place for this hybrid system. We are still above the 5% threshold for the number of positive COVID cases, but we are, the Oneida Nation has received vaccines. I just received my vaccine this morning, as a matter of fact. And the priority was the elderly community, our elder care center, then the health workers within the health system here on the reservation, and then the entire faculty and staff of both schools here. And so we're well on our way. It's been late in coming. I'm sure we all hope that this had happened a lot sooner than it did, but given the leadership at the federal level, I'm not sure that how we ended up getting to where we are now. That's just my personal opinion, but yeah, I mean, we have a number of stakeholders that provide various components for our school meals. We have a buffalo farm, we have a Black Angus cattle farm, we have a grass-fed beef farm, which with shorthorn beef. We have an apple orchard. All of these entities that I mentioned are all members of the Oneida Community Integrated Food Systems. We had been meeting regularly in person, but that changed when the COVID restrictions became necessary. So we've been meeting virtually throughout the entire year 2020, and hopefully soon we'll be able to meet again in person.
Betsy, thank you. Thank you. Again, another example of resilience. Resilience, thank you. Melissa.
Hi.
Response and prioritization. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Happy Epiphany. Today starts the Mardi Gras season in New Orleans, whatever that's going to look like this year. So just looking for some celebration where we can get it. So here in New Orleans, we had, our food policy committee was actually formed out of disaster relief post-Katrina. So this is not new to us. We have mostly what we've been doing is information sharing and what we call policy translation. So we had a very early spike in cases, and New Orleans is very inequitable to begin with. So we have very high rates of poverty, very high rates of like health issues. I don't know why I can't think of words. I'm sorry. And so we weren't at a great place to begin with. So once the pandemic happened, we really had to pivot into letting people know, where can you get food? What does how do you apply for unemployment? What does SNAP look like now? And it changed so quickly that we found it was hard for us to keep up. And this is what we do. So trying to figure out how do we get the word out about pandemic EBT and the changes to SNAP and the changes to unemployment so that we could really connect people with the resources that they needed. We also did a fair amount of policy, again, we call it translation, to local policymakers, because so much of the national things that were coming down impacted locally. And it was just, really hard to kind of keep track. And so we were thinking about, families that suddenly your child's out of school where they may have gotten most of their meals. Suddenly your job in service industry, because we are a tourism-based city, you no longer have. Going to the grocery store might be unsafe. How are you going to feed your family? And so it was really trying to get that information out to folks and do it in a way that was equitable, in a way that we knew that we could get that information to them. So, putting it on our website, on Facebook may not have been the best way to do it. So we actually, for Pandemic EBT and a few others, big initiatives, we had information translated into 3 languages, and we had it printed and sent to all of the schools. We worked with the school system, and it was sent home with every child at that first meal pickup. So it was over 20,000 flyers in 3 different languages that we got out, and we really found that that was helpful, and it kind of helped us figure out how to get information out to folks as things shifted and changed. And we're continuing to do that. I mean, with the stimulus that just happened, now we're having to go back to folks and say, okay, here's the changes in SNAP, here's the changes in unemployment, here's how those 2 things interact with each other. So it's really been kind of holding the information and getting it out as best as we can. You're muted, Karen.
So thank you. Listen, thank you. And you can see I'm saying, oh, I'm muted. So we're thinking here about knowing that as food policy councils, you're always thinking about inequities and racism and how it's impacting your work. But with reflecting on the application of all that, the thread that's been pounding us this year, how has that impacted your council, its steadfastness? And Elisa, I'm going to come right back to you. With Katrina was your pre-pandemic, right? It was getting you sort of ready, but we're never really ready. So share with us what kinds of things that you have been doing or lifting up or leaning in more since in this year of amplified racism.
Sure. Again, New Orleans is a very inequitable city to begin with. And so we really had to keep that in mind and in our hearts when we went to do work on food security and help for our partner organizations to also keep that at the forefront. And again, it was interesting because once all of these things happened, we had so many people say, I had no idea it was this bad. To which those of us working in it thought, how did you not know it was this bad? So really trying to uplift the community members and to, again, do things in different languages, do things in non-traditional ways. Right now, we are doing SNAP outreach to seniors because they're the most vulnerable group, and many of them are seniors of color. And so what we're having to do is print off applications, drive them to their house, talk to them over the phone to sign up for SNAP, pick them back up and mail them into the office. So just trying to think of different ways to reach out to people, to meet them where they are, as opposed to assuming anything. We've noticed the digital divide is great, and the need has just increased. Yeah, I'm not sure if that necessarily answered the question. I think I got, okay, good.
Absolutely, because you're actually talking about how more intentional you had to be about making connections when we're told not to be connected. When everything we're experiencing right now is saying, oh, 6 feet, no, but you are making sure that those who are not glued to their computers like many of us, that they're still getting the information and the connection that they need to be able to heal through and be nourished through. So thank you. Absolutely. Jesse, could you share with us a little bit about how it's impacted and how you have operated with the amplification of racism in our space?
Well, to begin with, we had already began our curriculum within our school system to incorporate sustainability. This, through various reasons, we decided that starting children out at an early age about the improvement in health that can be attained by eating good foods and getting themselves prepared for when they get older. They can pass along to their parents, even teach some of the elders what they're learning as far as the sustainability project is concerned. Part of the reason why we have a Black Angus beef farm, buffalo farm, and we have an aquaponics project where we grow greens, and with fish, it's a complete system. We harvest tilapia, and we harvest greens for salads and things like that on a weekly basis. So the pandemic basically interrupted that process because of the limit on the number of gathering spaces. People were not able to gather and plan for this coming season yet. So some of the adversity that has taken place, we've been able to adapt to or adjust for. But for the most part, our plan, our sustainability plan, will remain on track, and with increased amount of education within our curriculum, and hopefully going forward, we'll have more people that are interested in, and we'll see the need for raising our own food.
Thanks, Jesse. Thank you. Thank you. So Tamara, share with us.
So I alluded previously to the way that community really stood up and fed each other, and the Food Council and many community partners were in some ways involved with this effort, but there were many new efforts and city staff as volunteers and as partners. What we saw, our school district did an amazing job of feeding kids, but there was this just incredible proliferation of community-based efforts that were not food shelves, were not groups that were previously distributing food, and it posed some challenges for us to understand as a city how these efforts should be done safely, and if and how they should be regulated. But we had been doing frequent calls with the community just as an open forum to communicate about updates and challenges. And I will say with some gratitude to everybody who has been feeding each other. This is an approach that we've been taking to try to provide our appreciation, but also our city did work in the spirit of Homegrown Minneapolis and the great way we're trying to be responsive of changing some rules so that we have a new community food distribution permit in addition to the food shelf license, after great review with community of the inequity of our food shelf license as it was in the pandemic. There was a lot of community input incorporated into a new kind of pandemic specific community food distribution permit and approach that really recognizes and honors the contribution of community efforts around the city and the real impact that people have been having and needing. And thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of people have probably been fed through these efforts over these last months, in addition to the kind of more top-down efforts that certainly have been happening around the city. This network of community members, we really, as a food council and as a city, really have benefited from. And in the previous conversations about what we've learned through the listening and the connecting we've done, some of the things we surfaced to some people said, well, these are the things that you need, just more infrastructure, more refrigeration, and more ways to connect the dots in the local food system. Isn't this what people were saying before? And it's like, yes, trying to surface that people have been telling us these things, and now is the time to listen more closely, that with a local food system, it's been resilient. And if we can help connect the dots and build and one thing we do, putting investment when we can leverage resources into the community organizations and businesses. They have great wisdom and great relationships, and with that additional resourcing can really even do a more tremendous job of the work they're already doing. So it's been a journey this year in seeing what was already there and how we can better continue listening and supporting that and lifting up those leaders' voices in the work.
Thank you, Tamara. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We're going to flow into, because we've heard your stories of resilience and also how you've managed and navigated and prioritized during this time of these pandemics. And we're going to go into a breakout to have all of us here to have a chance to reflect and share. But before we do that, we wanted to take a moment for silent reflection. And in the spirit of what we've just heard and shared by Tamara and Jesse and Elisa, what touches you most? One moment. Be thinking about that. Okay. Now, before Rachel gives us instructions for the breakout, I just feel that we have to acknowledge what Pat has shared in the chat about the protesters at the Capitol and the violence that is happening there. So however you submit your request for health and healing, please do that while we're together, because there are things that are happening around us that we have no control over, but we are still all connected in that. So let's lift them up in thought, heart, and prayer. Rachel, you want to give instructions for the breakout rooms?
Sure. Thank you, Karen. So we're going to move you all into breakout rooms, about 5 people per breakout room. And when you enter the breakout rooms, please do a brief introduction of your name, pronoun, and location again, so your small group can know who you are. And I will assign you to a room randomly. And if you can accept the invitation to join the breakout room, we'll continue the same breakout rooms during the second half of our event today. And I'd also like to let you know that Renee, our graphic recorder, will be joining in 3 different breakout rooms. So if she's joining in your breakout room, that's great, and you'll get to be reflected in the graphic recording. Otherwise, if there's something really insightful that comes out of your talk or discussion, please do share it with us so we can add it into the notes and reflect it later. The breakout room discussions will not be recorded. So this is really a time to open up and share, and we encourage you to unmute yourself, turn on your video if you can, and really be an active participant. And you'll have 10 minutes in the breakout room, and Karen will go through all those details next.
Thanks, Rachel. So one of the things is we were talking about possibility of doing, having facilitators. You know, sometimes we go in our breakouts and there's somebody kind of leading the conversation, but we're really asking us to go in as totally shared leadership, exercising that or participating in that way. So not waiting for someone to get you started. We're going to give you the questions to be pondering on and sharing on. And as Rachel said, you'll start out with the introductions of name, pronoun, and location, and then get into the dialogue. But we also wanted to lift up, and I know we all do this, wherever we are, when we're gathering more than 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, we have agreements of how we're going to be together during that time. And so for us today, just want to lift these up for us to be thinking about as we're sharing, as we're connecting, and certainly, most importantly, while we're listening. And be curious, open and respectful. The conversation is as much about listening as it is about talking. So maintain an attitude of exploration and discovery. Be fully present and speak from our own experience, the I statements, share what's important to you, and speak authentically from your personal experience and be considerate of others and welcome others to do the same. You've heard this one, take space, make space, step up, step back. And that's where those of us that are ponder and think and take a little longer to start speaking, that we want to make that space so their voices can be heard. And those of us who speak quickly and on the edge of our seats want to share, want to pull ourselves back a little bit. And one way of doing that also is a 3 before me, to allow 3 voices before mine is heard again. So try that on. Certainly always, we are doing this work and being conscious of intent versus impact. No matter how the intention, we're always responsible for the impact. And most importantly, I say again and again and more directly, listen deeply. And for understanding, listen for new learning, listen for commonality, for connection, for points of intersection and belonging and shared values. So you have approximately 10 minutes in those chats, and it should be 5 people there, and so just, again, let it flow and let voices come forth. So welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. And we know that more time, we always enjoy being in community and more time, but love to be able to hear what was lifted up in your conversations. Love it in our time together here of, 1 or 2 people like to share. And absolutely use the chat, as you all have been so generously doing. Use the chat box to offer anything else that you want us to know was on your hearts, on your minds, and came forth, because the chat is also going to be recorded. So any volunteers?
This is Erica Hall. I'm just watching the events unfolding in DC. So I'm transfixed by that. I moved from DC to Florida 2.5 years ago. So I walk these streets many a day, work there, live there, colleagues, and I'm just concerned for their safety and, just hoping that everybody's okay. So honestly, I'm kind of distracted by that right now.
Erica, absolutely. Absolutely. Appreciate that and with you in that spirit.
Yeah, this is Carol Corin. I'm out of Pennsylvania, southeastern Pennsylvania, an area served very well and ably by Philabundance and a number of other programs. But I think it's critical that security councils argue hard and fast for expansions of SNAP programs. It is critical that the process be streamlined and that there be a greater understanding of the utility of these programs. Granted, people should be supported with nutrition counseling. You can zero in on allowing them to be narrower in terms of the application of what they can be used for, but you must argue for those, because that is the most efficient way to assure appropriate nutrition for families and for people in the country. It is insane to try to do it in the manner that we're currently attempting to. It is just insane.
I was going to add something else on a different vein, Carol. Asia in our group said this, I think, of final words that got cut off as we were brought back. Just, it's going to take a ton of compassion. Thinking about what we're witnessing on the screen right now in DC, and we have opportunities working for food for all people to bridge divides that are hard to bridge any other way right now, and keeping that layer of our work active, present, compassionate, and moving us towards a less volatile 2024 would be awesome.
Compassion and grace. Thank you. Others, what was lifting up in your your conversations in the midst.
Do any of you know about the program that Robert Edgar, who had started DC Kitchen and then went on to work in LA Kitchen, organized and sad to say had to give up on? He had taken what he did in DC Kitchen, where he had collected food that wasn't served or used in supermarkets and restaurants, and then had people who were homeless come and learn how to work in kitchens and make food with it and distribute it. He then took that model, which became a social enterprise in Washington, D.C., to LA. And his intention was to have people learn kitchen craft and acquire the food from the LA Food Distribution Center, unsold food, and then have a for-profit B corporation called Strong Food that would make food for the elderly, Wheels on Meals Foods. And he had to compete with a for-profit group that the Los Angeles County contracted with. And he could not get the county to work with him. And it still strikes me as insane. There's an article in Philanthropy Today about it. I urge you all to read it, because there again, there's this opportunity for work to be created for people who need work. And it's not taking away work. It's simply responding in a very appropriate way for recycling foods that again, Fill Abundance and programs like that are capturing, but creating jobs for that food as well. There's a lot of social enterprise opportunity in the food security movement that's not being exploited. And it's opportunity that recycles produce.
Thank you, Carol. I think that when we continue to think of it as me and my organization and not us, how we can maximize and make more for more, we have to come out of that mindset of individualism and think about the whole. And that is a decision that one has to make morally, spiritually, and operationally. Thank you for sharing that. Others?
This is Susan DeLandon. I'm in Pennsylvania as well, but further north from Carol. What is amazing that has come out of the problems and the issues of 2020 is the community resilience that we have seen, and especially when you look at the lights at the framework of the national outlook, and what's happening in DC and how far removed many of our congressmen and senators are from our communities. Community resilience has just been amazing. And there are so many folks who have stepped up in communities across the country that are doing absolutely amazing things. Yes, helping their neighbors and helping their community, but also creating new things and creating jobs and opportunity and creating new ways to reinvent the food system. And so I think it's really important that we grab onto that and that we keep supporting that.
Susan, thank you. Bringing us back to the resilience of community, resilience of spirit, and doing it in allyship and community. Thank you. So this was a time in our agenda that we were going to take a break, a 5-minute break for you to get water, coffee, pause, whatever you can do in that 5 minutes before we go on with the second part of our time together.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming back and joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started. Sorry for the brief break, but we have another exciting conversation and get to hear from Jesse, Tamara, and Elisa. And so I will pass it off once again to Karen Spiller to lead us in our next discussion with our panelists. You're muted.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, thank you. And yes, we're going to move to what we're calling, what are we taking from 2020? And we're going to talk about it from the point of view of unexpected gifts and the opportunities that we will see. And I love it. We're going to have Tamara and Elisa and Jesse share those thoughts with us. And if we could combine them, Tamara and Elisa, Jesse, you know, what were those unexpected gifts? And then what do you see as the opportunities, and kind of tying them together? If you could share that with us as we hear your voices and hear from your Food Policy Council. So Tamara, would you begin?
Yes. So, you know, I think, you know, the illumination over the last year of so many existing currents and networks that were there, and new partners and new perspectives, and how to do the work as a better bureaucrat, as a better you know, a civil servant. These are things going into 2021 with the privilege of being able to slow down the work together, to step back and to think about breath in a different way. That's a privilege that not everybody has, and I appreciate that, and the opportunity to support so many amazing neighbors and leaders in building a better food system together. And every day see new leaders that I hadn't had the opportunity to see at work before. And like our other cities sharing, I think there's a lot that was accomplished, but the taking of the step back and thinking about who's been doing that and not being given the platform to be recognized or to speak or to have the power. And we've had these conversations, but how do we truly authentically make those changes in how we show up together? It's I don't want to think about it as something I'm taking, but that I'm hopefully will be giving to, really.
Tamara, thank you. Thank you. And you'll take that through as you decide and as you work with your community on those new opportunities that you're going to creating. Out of the ashes will come the sunshine.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, we've had a sunny day here today, and it's there are incredible farmers markets and local businesses and folks who throughout this have shown up and grown food and sold food to their communities in delicious and nourishing ways, and we have yes, many policy opportunities together to get that snap that we know. I mean, I think this idea here in our city of what does building and rebuilding look like and regenerating when we have, you know, built, or our community has built its own, you know, self, and how do we invest in the community for that to look and feel and flow the way it needs to. I think within the city, it has been a gift for new collaborations to form that really can actualize and activate this in new ways, and it's going to take time. But I think we have some partnership with this food action plan and with these other policy efforts to get people money in their pocket to buy the food and to have the housing that they need, so that food is not the way that that it is right now for a hunger relief, but a nourishing and kind of empowering experience. So yeah, I found great inspiration from my collaborators who were not able to share their voices today, but are here in spirit and are out working, doing all of the incredible work that they have been leading.
Thanks, Tamara. Elisa, again, unexpected gifts and
Yeah,
opportunities you see.
sure. I think, you know, I think what everyone is saying is the gift of relationships. And so that has been really impactful for us. We now have really strong relationships, are stronger with the city's disaster relief, with the school system. And we're all working together to make sure that we're doing more kind of wraparound and holistic. So, you know, we are getting information about school meals to community members. We're also getting information about SNAP applications to them and about disaster relief, and kind of all working together on that, and not kind of all working separately and then occasionally being like, wait, what are you doing again over there? Should we connect? We're kind of formed like this team of we gotta get in there. So that's been really meaningful. I also think that it's been meaningful and an unexpected gift to be able to humanize each other and humanize our colleagues. You know, like, you guys can see my bedroom, but like we have kids coming in and we have pets, and we're really kind of being vulnerable because at this point we kind of have to be. And so I think that's been an unexpected gift, especially in a time when we are all kind of burnt out. And so just allowing grace to each other and to really think about that, like to have that on the forefront that everyone needs more than we can probably give. And so how do we support each other? Something I've been thinking a lot about, moving that forward. Opportunities, you know, despite what's happening right now in DC, I think that we have a lot of policymakers now and incoming policymakers who really have the community at heart and know what's really happening in the communities. And I think that's probably also the reason for some of this unrest, because there's a change underfoot and it's more representative of people and the people, if you will. And so I think that's a really great opportunity that we just have to figure out how to kind of harness that energy and really, kind of coalesce everything around food security and around people as opposed to around politics, if that makes sense. So that's what I'm taking from this and where I'm hoping to go.
Thanks, Elisa. Thank you. So Jesse, again, same question. What unexpected gifts and then what opportunities do you see in policy and everything?
Well, one of the most beautiful things that I've experienced is the number of people among us and the community at large that really have focused on what the needs of the community are. Not just on the reservation here, but also in the city of Green Bay. The opening up of shelters, organizations that are willing to help feed. I think a lot of people had their eyes opened wider when they realized that the need was much greater than they had thought it would be or could be. So as far as the opportunities going forward, I'm looking forward to collaborating with a number of organizations that I learned about during this last year. We have both Indigenous and non-Indigenous people who are interested in learning about each other's traditions and about each other's culture. And making a better go of it. So going forward, I think although we had to experience some turmoil, that it's going to be, the future is going to be much brighter. And that's what I'll have in my heart going forward.
Jesse, thank you. Thank you. So there is, Jesse,
I'll say that I get emotional when I talk about things like this.
yes.
Just
And emotion and heart is what we need. So grateful to all three of you for sharing the unexpected gifts and what you see as the opportunities and the life that is pushing forth in all of the trauma that we are experiencing. Making it better. Absolutely. So we would move into breakouts now, just so that you have an opportunity, because we don't get a chance very often to come together in this way. I know we've been Zooming, but in the spirit of this community and the food policy councils across the country, it's a moment that we have. So we're going to move into the breakouts, but before we do, that moment of silence around the reflection of what you just heard, what was shared, when they were speaking, what came up for you. Just one moment of reflecting on that, as Elisa and Jesse and Tamara shared what their hopes were, what was on their heart for their communities. I'm just going to say this is a pause, because we are always thinking about these things and always acting on this. So we will continue that into the spirit as we go into the breakout rooms. Just a reminder that Renee is going to be coming in to 3 random spaces and doing the graphic art of the conversations, capturing them visually. And we have our community agreements that will emphasize, again, shared leadership, shared participation, and enjoy that space together. And same questions. What?
I'm also going to just jump in and say, even though we plan to put you in the same rooms, if your room turns out to have lost several people, I see there are a few rooms that only have 2 people left in them, we will move you to a different room. So you might be joining a new room, but otherwise everyone should be expected to go back to the same rooms.
Thanks, Rachel. Thank you so much for handling the magic that's going to happen. So same questions that we asked of Elisa and Jesse and Tamara about the gifts, unexpected gifts, the policy opportunities, and what do you hope for right now? We're going to add that to that list. Okay, welcome back, everyone. So again, that certainly we know it's not enough time. It's never enough time to be in community. But we'd love for several offerings of what was shared and shared with us as a larger group. Please, again, use the chat to share things that may not come up as we speak, so the floor is open. What was shared? What was shared in your breakup? What unexpected gifts you had? We all had gifts during this time. We all did.
Well, I would like to.
Paula.
My name is Paula, and I am in Pueblo, Colorado, Southern Colorado, with the Pueblo Food Council. We started out on a whole different mindset because I feel like this whole group is kind of quiet and somewhat heart-centered, serene today. There's a lot going on in our nation and for change. And regardless of the parties, I think it's time for change. And we would love to see, I would love to see redirection of distribution. And so we talked about, if we're talking about policy, it would be great to see, you know, not just centralization, like talking about USDA meatpacking being so few and far between in communities and states, but to decentralize and have several layers and levels of options so that if a pandemic occurs, then there are other options for people to fall back on and saying, okay, who's going to feed me? And I think that for us to dream and be creative and innovative so that we can go to places we haven't been before. And one of the examples I kind of used in a couple of our conversations was our community did an edible garden. And I hadn't thought of that before I was on this council, but to have an edible garden, what if I can go through the park, if I'm homeless and there's a tree of apples and a garden of cucumbers and peppers and tomatoes, I can eat. So how do we expand our minds, our communities, our policies to embrace that and start taking care of humanity and the heart space? Because I think that, you know, like, you know, Jesse was getting emotional. I understand that. I honor that. So to look at change, I kind of feel is where our big conversation was, and what is possible to redirect. And that's what I pray for. So all can be fed.
Thank you, Paula. So all can be fed.
Well, I'd like to say something. I'm Anna Dawson, and I found two people interested in my freezing and vacuum packaging at the community level. And I think that's wonderful because I've done it for a long time. And now is an opportunity for this idea to go everywhere. But I can't do it alone, not at 80. But this computer and PowerPoints and all that kind of stuff can do a lot of good. So I'm glad I came to this.
Oh, Anna, thank you for being here. That is such a gift. We talk about unexpected gifts. You being here with us today is an unexpected gift. So thank you. Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you.
I am Rosanna Salazar. I am from Amherst, Massachusetts. Many things touch me the most, that we have to continue believing people. In difficult times, the community is always ready to help, ready to organize, to raise money, to be volunteer, to create spaces for people, to create jobs. So right now we are designing our Hampshire policy, food policy council. Between other goals is push the system to create policies, to prioritize needs. So we were involved in many different things to create resources like the mobile market project that was working with local farms, increasing food resources through food organizations, working in collaboration. Always we were prioritizing vulnerable populations and let them know that we are together, dealing with all these different issues that we have to live in the past year. Organizations were increasing their resources while people were losing their jobs also. We have the city, the town, with the Chamber of Commerce distribute 100 meals from restaurants. We also have a problem like consider appropriate cultural food resources, yes, and more resources from local government also. That was very important. And like our peer in these breaking sessions, Edwin said, thinking a more holistic way is very important, especially in these specific time of food insecurity, evictions, unemployment, discrimination, inequity, etc. So working together is the key. We are strong together.
Rosanna, thank you. Working together, we're stronger together. We're in the chat, it was shared as taking care, starting to take care of humanity and being nourished, and relationships and partnerships that move our work. Thinking more about the understanding of race and inequity and how we need to have those important conversations with different people, people that don't look like us, but actually share our same values. And understanding the levels and layers of our entire food system, the intersectionality of that. So there's so much, but the hope that Fran shared here is that more people have their eyes open right now, and young people are working very highly aware of the injustice and willing to let it stand. So more of us still standing to not let the injustice stand and become a part of our space. That's what makes the difference. So I'd love for the closing or the pause, I call it a pause. Tamara and Jesse and Elisa, if you would share in maybe a word or two, what do you hope for right now? What do you hold on to? What fuels you? So that we can feel that energy, so we can be fueled as we pause and move to a different space.
Let me just get, okay, great. What's fueling me and giving me hope is really this kind of mutual aid and community that has always existed, but is really strengthened right now. And it's seeing people, if they get extra apples at the food bank, they're bringing it to their neighbors. Or we have community fridges that just popped up that people are sort of adopting and stocking with fresh milk and adding diapers to it, and just really seeing kind of this beautiful holding of each other, while also seeing, again, it's hard to say this in this exact moment, but seeing the shift in leadership that will hopefully shift toward a more just set of policymakers who really hold on to community and are from community and understand it and represent. So I think those two things are really giving me hope. And then just like seeing my 4-year-old just kind of doing his thing while the big cold is happening, and just, like he's just doing it and living it. And that's what I'm trying to also do.
Melissa, thank you. In the midst of all of that, continuing to hold close. Are you pensive there?
Pensive. Yeah, together we are stronger, and we will be, and taking motivation and inspiration from that, and hope coming into the year with, despite all of this, right? Hope, appreciation.
Thank you, Jesse.
Oh, I wanted to say that I share the hopes of Elisa and Tamara, and I see a better future. In my 67 years of life, I have never witnessed the outpouring of goodwill. We can't overcome this. There's light for us, for me, there's light at the end of the tunnel. I'm sure we'll get there. have conversations with my sons. I have a 30-year-old and 29-year-old and a 25-year-old, and then a 20-year-old, and all of them share with me their, the need for some sort of revolution. I don't think it's going to be the type that they're actually looking for, but I think the amount of people willing to stand up to level the playing field and bring justice to all communities, I think is an excellent sign, and we'll continue working with that. I also have a daughter who organizes demonstrations here in the Green Bay area to bring justice. We recently, several years ago, had a Oneida tribal member who was shot and killed by the police. He was unarmed. He was in police custody, and no charges were brought there yet either. The officer is actually still on duty. So we have a purpose for working for justice within the legal system, and want to continue that.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you. It's being resilient. It's being solutionary. It's being steadfast. It's moving with humanity at the speed of trust, goodwill, regenerative, talking about redistribution and regeneration and dreams, dreaming, and creative innovation. But we also said, and I heard it many, many times, about the heart and the caring and the reaching and holding close. So I say that that's in times like this, even though we are social distance, we are resilient and finding ways to hold each other close, because we need to know. And in this moment, we know we're not alone. We are in a community that supports, cares, holds you close. And I want to thank Elisa and Tamara and Jesse for the generosity of your spirit and sharing your lived experience and your commitment and your grace to our food system and food justice work during these uncertain times. So thank you. And Karen, Anne and Rachel, thank you so much for inviting me in the space. It's been a gift, one of those unexpected gifts for my life as well, to be in this space with you all. So Karen, I'm going to pass it on to you for the pause until next time.
Thank you, Karen. And we have a few announcements, but before I do that, before everyone leaves, I just wanted to reiterate what Karen was saying, and the thanks for joining us in this space today, for sharing, for reflecting, for giving of yourselves and your thoughts. And Karen Spiller, thank you so much for guiding us through this conversation. Your presence, your warmth, your ability to reflect back has made this such a rich conversation. So thank you. And Jesse, Tamara, and Elisa, thank you for being open and vulnerable and sharing with us today. I take away a lot of hope, but also a lot of reflections on the power of relationships and the power of our good efforts and our good intentions, and the humanity of the work that we do. And so we look forward to next year and what's to come. This is the part one of a two-part series. The next one will be in early February. We still have not set the date, but during the next part of this, we will again have breakout room conversations, but we'll be focusing more on kind of what's to come. What do we see in the future? What do we see with the new administration? What do we see in terms of policy and our change for our food system? So we hope you will join us for that, and we'll send out the announcement through the listserv. In addition to that, during that event, we will also hopefully highlight some features of the Kansas City region. We're hoping to do a beverage cocktail demonstration as well. We really want to entice you to come to an event in person next September. In addition, we are once again hosting the 6th Annual Food Policy Network's photo contest. And this year we're putting together a listicle. So send us your photos of what 2020 looked like for you. We want to see what happened with your food systems. We want to see how you captured that. There are cash prizes, and right now you have a really good chance of getting a cash prize because I think we have maybe 2 submissions so far. The deadline is January 15th, and you can submit your photos to Rachel at rsanto1@jhu.edu. And then lastly, we will be doing another round of data collection about Food Policy Council responses to COVID-19. That should be coming up within the next month, maybe. We're not quite sure. But the responses that we received from you to the first survey, we are putting together a report, a wheel of achievements, and we're hoping to get that out within the next month or so that you can see what's happening with other councils. Also, we want to use it in terms of highlighting the work that you do tirelessly and with great conviction and compassion. We know that food policy councils are really underfunded, and we want to showcase to funders and to policymakers just the work that you've been called to do in a pandemic that is above and beyond the work that you normally do. So thank you all for your time, for your work, for everything. I know that it is very distracting what's going on right now. And I hope that you leave here with a feeling of love and warmth and gratitude. And I hope for the best in what's to come. So again, thank you all. And with that, we will close.
Thank you for the opportunity, Karen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This was lovely.
For Huron, WBGR